Up until recently, I was not a horror movie guy. In my mind, I could get the same experience out of a book without the fear that I was going to jump out of my seat every few minutes. Jump scares suck, and I still believe that they're cheap horror. When I did see one, it wouldn't even scare me that bad, but the anticipation kind of got to me. I'm not really sure what changed, but I started watching them far more frequently recently, to the point that I could say that I legitimately enjoy the genre. Not all of them were good, but a few of them stuck with me as some of my favorite movies ever, to the point that I could say that I legitimately enjoy the genre. But a few weeks ago, I decided it was time that I dove back into a show that I'd been wanting to watch for quite a while. The Haunting of Hill House. Funnily enough, I'd given it a shot when it came out in 2018 after reading the book. I made it about an episode and a half in before quitting. I was intrigued, but not man enough to really dive in. But since watching Dr. Sleep last year, I found myself once again itching to see more of Mike Flanagan's work. So I decided to dive back into Hill House, this time on the big screen, also known as the projector in my backyard. I don't think it'll be a surprise to anyone that I think this is a good show. It's not exactly a controversial statement, but as someone who doesn't put a lot of stock into what critics think, and someone who's never watched a horror show before this, I wasn't quite sure if I loved it at first. The first episode or two were actually quite uneventful, to the point that you aren't really sure if the ghosts really exist. But the ghosts actually aren't the point of Hill House. It's about the people and how their experiences as children broke them. It's really quite impressive how they're able to balance 5 people as kids and adults, their parents, and the friends and family of all the major characters. It was so fun to me, especially since I'd only seen horror movies up until now. And horror movies often struggle to properly explore one or more characters, let alone a dozen over different time periods. Here, every single character you meet is enticing enough to be the star of their own series. So Hill House really isn't about the ghosts, it's about the people. The scariest stuff is usually the people too. Steve's greed, Nell's depression, Luke's drug addiction, Theo's disconnect with the people around her, and Shirley's need to control everything all originate from the house. And the house is the most interesting character of them all. They touch on it towards the end of the show, about the house having eyes and a heart, and it really does change the context of the whole show. Episodes 9 and 10 explain most of the weird things that happen in the house, not by grounding them in reality like another show might, but instead it explains everything by showing a bunch of scenes with the new context. These scenes were scary the first time since you don't really know what's happening, but they're even more horrifying the second time around, where you get to see new context from a new perspective as the show is ending. Hill House succeeds as a horror flick, a mystery, and a thriller, but most importantly, it succeeds as a character study on a family being torn apart. But the biggest success the show has, in my opinion, is what is often the fatal flaw of other movies: the ending. Even some of my favorite horror movies seem to fall short just before they have finished, preventing them from becoming masterpieces. The Babadook comes to mind as a nearly perfect movie with a little bit of a lackluster ending. Hill House, on the other hand, ascends into heaven with its ending. I wanted to clap as you see the aftermath of the events of the final confrontation in the house. Each of the characters gets a reasonably happy ending that doesn't feel forced at all. You can argue that they don't deserve a happy ending after everything they've done to the people around them, but I don't really care. I'm not usually a fan of positive endings to depressing shows like this, but I can't think of anything better in this case. The acting is also on another level. It's incredible the amount of talent in one show with this many characters. Even better, the kids all look like their adult counterpart, and the whole family looks related, which is always a nice bonus. And to top it off, the writing is top-notch. Each character has a unique way of speaking, almost like they're written by different people in a good way. The kid actors are also doing a pretty good job, all things considered, and the adults are all putting on a real performance. As the show comes to close, I realized I wasn't necessarily scared of what was going to pop up, but I was truly concerned for the lives of all the characters. I don't even think there were any jump scares in the last 2 episodes, which only proves that the characters aren't some empty husks serving as vessels for a bunch of ghost crap. Jump scares may be cheap horror, but real fear is watching a family crumble. What I'm trying to get at is the third adaptation of an old haunted house book has sold me on horror TV all on its own. I'm just worried that nothing else is going to be able to compare. Apparently season 2 is coming out, adapting another old book called The Twist of the Screw, but with the current state of the world, who knows when that's going to be. I'm just glad the show exists. It's really good. I'm just annoyed that it took me this long to realize that. It's a really solid 9 out of 10.